way here doing a horizontal live stream. Usually I do vertical only because the vertical ones are easier to find. I've only done one or two other horizontal ones here, but I hope I'm praying that you guys that are subscribers and also people, find YouTube finds people that are interested in these topics because I feel like it's important to get into that. And some of the comments on the vertical one can be ridiculous, and I'm hoping that it's not like that on here. So if you're tuning in, my name is Josh. If you're new to the channel, if you're returning, thank you guys so much for being here. I'm coming to you from my house this time. Usually I'm in my car, but today I wanted to get on here and try this. I got a quiet house. I got some free time, so I thought I'd jump on here and kind of get into this topic of I got a podcast coming up on Sober Strong. Her name's Megan. She's a YouTuber, just like this channel. I think she does some other things, coaching, and she's got a website too. But at any rate, Saturday, I'm going to jump on there. I've only done one other podcast interview. I've been an interviewee. I did one last year of my pastor, and I thought it went well. I thought it was pretty good. I mean, I thought it was really good for me, but for me personally, I got a couple hundred views, 150, 200 views. So it got out there a little bit, probably not as much as I kind of hoped that it would, but I mean, it was early on. It was like one of the first 6 weeks that I posted on there. But I'm glad that I got on here today. I started filming a video about 5 minutes ago, and I got into some real like meat of some issues of some past trauma. And it was interesting because I was going to go there on the podcast and really talk about some intimate details of what really led me to drinking. And I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad that I didn't because, man, not just because I felt uncomfortable talking about it, but mainly because I wasn't sure that I wanted what to divulge all that in a YouTube video and then have that be out there for all to see. You know what I mean? You don't know what can happen on public platforms as far as posting those kinds of details. So I'm not sure exactly how important it really is to get into those specifics anyway. I feel like it's probably more important to talk about trauma as it relates to drinking more than it is to get like in the weeds and in the thick of these things because it's not important. It's not always comfortable for us to talk about that stuff in general with people even that we trust because just hearing the words out loud as we talk about them can trigger a lot of different emotions. It can even lead us to drinking. I mean, I'm sure it can lead to slipping, to relapsing, and uh, and so that's kind of why I thought it was better to, you know, maybe do a like um, vague topic, maybe like big trauma as it pertains to our starting to drink and then our using it because we feel good using it. We feel like it's a good relief. It's a good stress relief. But then as the years go on, we start to recognize that we're hooked on it and we can't let it go. And I feel like that's an important aspect to talk about. Um, like I said, I wasn't sure how many people would be joining on here. I hope that by 10 o'clock now, Eastern Standard Time, that there's some of my subscribers on here. I'll still, talk for a little bit. I hope to have some comments and some things going on in here that, like reasons why we like drink, some of the things that held us back and held us in that addiction. My prayers are that we can build up this community and that you guys feel comfortable sharing some of it. You know, it doesn't have to be like in-depth stuff. Like I said, I'm not that comfortable sharing really intimate details about my past, but I think it's important to at least acknowledge the fact that the trauma that we experience in our life can keep us addicted and can, you know, I turned to alcohol for solace. I turned to alcohol first off because I was curious about it. Then it turned into this feels good. Like I don't feel like I'm holding all of those things that happened to me in my past as much as I did, you know, as much as I was, and the alcohol was helping me get through that period of time in my life. Like I was 15 years old. I was going through my parents being divorced. I was, you know, going to high school now. I was trying to fit in. Things, I mean, things happened to me before I was really even able to. Hey, welcome in, Joe's. Joe says, I'm listening while I clean my car. I'm still going strong, sober, strong, strong, sober. A month. Congratulations on a month. That's awesome. And some weeks sober. Life has definitely been better. My son notices too, so our bond is getting stronger. That is awesome. And that's what it's all about. When we start seeing those that we care about acknowledge our accomplishments, even if it's like a week or a month, like you're at a month, that's awesome. And they're starting. He's starting to see that you're feeling better, acting probably, you know, better, not as mad, not as irritable. I mean, that like for me, that's really what led me to wanting to quit drinking was I was pissed off all the time. Like I just could not handle um any of the real things that were coming up day to day. It could be something simple, it could be something difficult that was difficult to deal with. Uh, but any little thing could trigger me off. It just depended on what frame of mind I was in when I was, you know, dealing with it. But it was usually because I was hungover and irritable. But um, I started to notice that uh, I was getting angry while I was drinking, and that was really what was starting for me, starting to show through more than it had in the past. Uh, I could usually drink and I isolated, but I didn't isolate so much like from everybody. Like I have a family, I have kids, I have a wife, so and a dog. I've had two dogs, but we have one now. But man, it was like I just I didn't want to engage in any like meaningful conversations with anybody. I didn't want to engage in any kind of like responsibilities. Once I got to that point where I was ready to drink, I was that was all I wanted to focus on. And I if someone brought some drama up, I would lose it. And so you have kids, so you know what I'm talking about. Um, is it just you and your son, or do you have more kids? Um, it's you know I have four kids. Three of them are grown up and moved out now. But man, that period of time uh, around like between like 2015 and 2020 was so difficult because all of our kids were teenagers and navigating one of them in particular, but two of them really, but all of them really. If I narrow it all down, they all had their quirks. They all had their things that you know that you could expect of them. But at the same time, like I wasn't accepting of that a lot of times. So I just would totally just um, you know come unglued when they would act out in ways that I could not handle. And and even comments that they might say, you know, might set me over the edge, and and cause more problems than. And my wife would say it all the time. She's like, the things that you're saying, I'm not saying that you shouldn't say them, or it shouldn't be talked about, but the way that it's coming out, it's causing more problems than it's worth, and causing more problems. um, where it's better just to kind of like let it go, leave it be, and maybe if it needs to be talked about later, because a lot of times kids, they don't want to be confronted about their behavioral issues, especially if they are really resistant, if they are really strong-willed and strong-minded. They don't want to hear that, and it's just like any other grown-up too. Like, we don't want to hear that we're doing something wrong. So, but a lot of times, we would have those tough conversations, and man, it did not go well. But yeah, just to getting back to the trauma, and talking about this stuff on this YouTube platform, and in general in public. It's a public platform, so it's, whatever we share is going to be out there. And so I'm doing this podcast on Saturday morning, so Valentine's Day. It was the first morning appointment she had, and I am more available in mornings, so I picked that day. Even though it's Valentine's Day, it's okay. It's in the morning. We'll get it done. But I haven't done a podcast in a while, and really, I did it like I did one with Annie Grace from This Naked Mind when I first started this channel. It was like right around when I first started this channel, and I did that, and it was great. And then it never got posted. She changed her format like right around that time. I was eagerly anticipating it being released so I could see it, because I didn't have it recorded or anything. And it turned out it never got released. It never, even to this day, it never got posted. And she had done like hundreds of podcasts up to that point for several years. So I was disappointed. But be that as it may, in the same week, I had a church testimonial, and I was able to, my pastor and we got together. First off, I introduced myself to my pastor, and that took a lot of it took a lot of nerve for me to do that. I'll be honest, like, because I've never been like that social of a person, or that outgoing, I guess. I mean, yes, I am sociable and I can be outgoing, but I like a lot of times I'll have to be in the right frame of mind to feel comfortable to even like introduce myself or share something or whatever. And leading up to that, like, I went to this church that he launched, him and his wife and like six of their friends launched this church. And I had known about him from another church before, and there was like a mass exodus of their pastors, and they all left. And so I ended up seeing that they launched this church. I went to the first service, and I loved it. And so I kept going back, and I went for like the first 3 months, like every Sunday. And then winter hit. It was like the year after COVID, and people were starting to get sick in the wintertime and this and that. And so I stopped going. I was gonna just give it a couple weeks, see if people stopped getting sick, and then, but they didn't. And so people were, so I ended up like taking a few months off. I went back in spring. I went a lot in the summer, and then it was starting to be Christmas time. It was starting to be holiday time, Thanksgiving, Christmas. And so it had been over a year since they launched, about a year. And so, but he was always standing outside, um, greeting people after the service. Now, these are big, these are like 300 people, 300 to 400 people per service. So, there's, needless to say, there's a lot of people that are gonna be there to talk to him. So I would always walk by, and I'd be like, if I was with my daughter, she'd say, "Go talk to him," and I'd say, "Oh no, he's busy. He's talking to somebody." And And so finally, I built up for whatever, however I did it. I started talking about it on This Naked Mind, and people were like, "You should just go up and meet him. You just go up and introduce yourself." And so by that time, I had built this up and anticipated it so much that I was like, I don't know if I can do it. But I saw him standing there. It happened to be on one day that I went by myself, and I saw him there, standing there. No one was talking to him. I went up, I introduced myself. I said, "Hey, I'm Josh. I've been coming here. I really enjoy your messages. And by the way, I'm going on, I think it was 3 years, 4 years sober at the time. Yeah, I think I was going on 4 years alcohol free." And that just came out. I was not expecting to say that. I was not planning on sharing that, but it came out. And I felt like, man, it came out for a reason. And the reason started to make sense after that, after I met him. He called me like a couple weeks later. Um, he said, no, actually, it wasn't like a couple weeks. It was a couple months. He said, we have this Easter. We have Easter coming up in like 6 weeks, I think it was, and I had someone cancel the church testimonial that they were going to do. Would you be interested in doing one for the service? Um, and and I think with your sobriety, it'd be valuable um, for you, for the congregation to talk about your sobriety and how how it how your faith and your belief led you to this, and so I said, yeah, 100%. I had never done anything like that. I was I was excited, but I was kind of nervous as it approached. But he set everything up. He did the interview. He had a film crew out there and edited it, and we had like some B-roll stuff that we shot too, and they put it together, and it was played on the big screen for like 1,000 people. um, I was totally nervous, but at the same time excited. Like I that was leading up to that. I wasn't really ready to talk about my sobriety openly. It wasn't. I wasn't really ready to do that yet. But I felt like those two things kind of helped me get to the other side of that and be able to be like, you know what? I think I can be of service and be of benefit to some people, and and we'll see where this goes. And I had been thinking about starting a YouTube channel um, for a few months even before that, because I knew that I was going to have to practice. I wasn't comfortable like being on camera, so I ended up um, like New Year's Eve. My daughter and I got a bunch of like party favors and some food and drinks and stuff, and I set up the camera and we did some funny like skits and stuff like that. And when I went back and watched it, and I started to like learn about, you know, how to feel comfortable like talking, just talking to the camera, not about sobriety, but just talking and being on film. And I didn't know that it was building up to this. And it was kind of interesting how that worked out. And then it was like, you know what? I already have a YouTube channel from a class that I took like 10 years prior, and I might as well just use that. So I posted my testimonial, and then I did some shorts, and then I did the podcast with him, and then I started making videos, and then, but yeah, it like the so to get back to what I really was getting at the beginning of this video was the trauma. Um, I don't know where you're at, Joe's. I haven't seen anyone else join here. It looks like it's just you and me. I wasn't sure, and I'm glad that you stayed here. I'm still gonna post this video in the live stream, just for anybody who wants to go back and watch it. So I think this is good. But yeah, at the same time, so I was ready to make a video this morning about trauma. I started talking about I was like how I wanted to open up that podcast interview and start talking about like from the very beginning of my life rather than start like when we start drinking or around that time, because everyone starts like when we start drinking, but we don't go into depth about like the reasons why we ended up there. You know what I mean? Like, how did you end up there, Joe's, if you don't mind sharing it? I think for me, it was a series of events that took place that were out of my control. I was just a kid. I was looking for solace, and my best buddy and I had his sister that was 21 already and had like beer and alcohol in her fridge, and they'd go out of town, and we thought, well, why don't we just go over there and we can drink some of their beers and we'll try it, you know? And we did, and we had a blast. And then after that, it was on, you know. But 15 years old, I think I was maybe a couple months before I was 16 when I first tried alcohol. But definitely, I was a freshman in high school. But there was so many things that led up to this. Like, we weren't like bad kids, I wouldn't say. I mean, we were kind of troubled. I mean, I never really got in too much trouble. I think he got in a little bit more trouble than I did actually before we were like in high school. But just some of the traumas that happened, like needless to say, the divorce, my parents' divorce. I didn't think that really played a huge role in like why I turned to alcohol at the time, but looking back on it, I definitely think that it was part of it. But there were other things that happened, and I don't want to get into too much detail, but I started to get into more depth about that on the video I was making. And then I was like, oh man, delete. And now I'm glad that I did that because I would have started to talk about stuff on the podcast that I wasn't necessarily um, comfortable talking with. And since it's her podcast, she's going to be doing the editing and she's going to, be in charge of that. So I just want to be able to share some traumas, but also just how important it is to go back and talk about those traumas. So I started to talk about like my therapist that I had when I quit drinking. Now he helped me stay sober. Like I was already like 8 or 9 days alcohol free when I saw him, and I was planning on drinking after the session with him. But he talked to me about, and he said, I don't condone this. And you've been around the channel a while. You probably already heard this story, but like, he just said, if you're going to drink, just think about how you feel after one, after two, after three. Don't just mindlessly drink. And I got home and I had the beer in the fridge, but I walked right by it. I gave my wife a kiss. I walked right by the fridge. I went into my room, and I heard her and our daughters laughing out here, having a good time. And I thought, I could go back and open that fridge, open that beer, and because this is what I always did. That's how I dealt with stuff. I would drink alcohol. You know what I mean? And that's just how it was. But I'm like, I could do that, but why would I want to wash away those voices of my family? I love them. I care about them. I've been trying to better myself because of them. I mean, for myself, but also because I want better relationships with the people that I'm living with, my family. And so, as soon as I thought that, I had like a breakthrough. It was amazing. Like, I just was like, I don't want to go to the fridge and do the same goddamn thing that I have been doing for 27 years. Like it doesn't work. I'm 42 years old. Um, I have a lot of life left, and I need to try something different. I need to try something that I haven't tried before, see if it works. And that was just not drinking. And it was a huge breakthrough. That beer sat in my fridge for the rest of that day. I didn't want it. I didn't crave it. It was in there the rest of the week. I had another therapy visit. I went in. I told my therapist. I said I didn't drink. He was his jaw dropped. He was like, I thought for sure you were going to go home and drink. And I said, me too. But your words of wisdom helped. And I thought about what you said. And I didn't even have to have that one or two or three drinks to know how I felt. I didn't want to feel that way anymore. I didn't want to drink. So, I mean, that was huge. And by the time I had that second visit with him, I was already um 10, so like 17 days without alcohol, 16, 17 days. Before that, my longest was like a week alcohol free. Um, since I was 19 years old and I got that DUI. When I got that DUI, I quit drinking for 30 days. Um, I should say I went all the way through my because this is public, so I don't want to incriminate myself, but I should just say um, the longest I went alcohol free was 30 days since I was 19 years old. So um, I got to 10 days, and because I think 9 was the longest I went, and those are usually because of hangovers. It wasn't because I was wanting to really quit drinking. It was because um, I was hungover and I didn't feel good. And then I went like 3 or 4 days and I still felt good, so I didn't want to just go back to drinking really quickly. So, but I usually after a week I'd slip back. So um, I went I went like 8 days, eight no like 8 or 9 days when I first got on Zoloft when I was first wanting to quit drinking. So like 2017, and then I slipped. I was healthier. I lost some weight. I was feeling good. Um, and then I don't know if it was just going to the psychologist to get the Zoloft or to check in with him that triggered me to drink again. I'm not sure the reason. I just think that I didn't have enough like experience or tools to get to the other side yet. So I drank, and then I went back and I told him like however months later that I went back and I said, yeah, I drank like right after I drank right after I saw you. And he was like, oh, disappointed. But at the same time, it was like, you know what? That was a learning experience. So to get back to the therapy part, so I had the therapy. I got through. I was a couple weeks alcohol free, and then I started thinking about, all right, so I have these things that I need to work out like right now. They're immediate. There are issues in my life, my personal life that I need to address right now. But there's things that I'm ruminating about from like decades ago, from my teenage years and even before being a teenager, young, like young kid, 8, 9, 7, 8, 9, 10. But and I was like, should we talk about that? And he said, well, we can at some point, but I don't think we're ready to you're ready to talk about that, or it's time to talk about that. It's just, but he's like, I'm open to talking about that, but just I think it's probably we just address what's going on now, and then later we'll get into more depth about that. Um, but yeah, so we didn't really get into it. 6 months I was in therapy. We never really got into it. Every time I wanted to talk about it, he was like, "Yeah, that could play a part of it, and but then that would be it." But I went, so I I went for 2 years. I got around my 2 year mark of being alcohol free, and I was still struggling with this, being bothered by comments people were making, like caring what other people were saying and thinking and of me, and like feared being judged and all these things. It was just bothering me. It was eating away. And I started noticing like I was still festering on comments people were making. And I was 2 years alcohol free and I was frustrated. Like, why am I still hanging on to this stuff? And furthermore, I was still ruminating about stuff that happened, like I said, 30 years ago. And I didn't want to feel that way anymore. I knew that those things were, they were kind of triggering me to want to drink, or not drink, but like escape in some way. Whether that was weed or mushrooms or taking vacations or whatever. I was seeking like an escape, and I didn't want that anymore. So I scheduled a visit with a different therapist, with a woman therapist. And the reason was because I didn't feel like the therapist that I had, who helped me tremendously stay sober and grow in aspects of my life that I wasn't able to grow in before, just didn't understand my home dynamic, having all daughters and a wife and being like the only like man other than like my dog at home. Uh, I felt like she was going to be able to, I was hoping that I would be able to get a perspective of someone who, a woman's perspective, and a different perspective, not just because she's a woman, but just a different perspective in general. And I'm glad that I did, because she did. She helped me get to a point where I was like, you know what? I need to talk about these past traumas, because I really think I'm beating myself up over things that happened all these years ago. And every time I get to a point where I'm struggling, I'm still ruminating about these like past things, these regrets, or these like feelings of like I made the wrong choices, or had, would things have been different if I made this choice or that choice or whatever, and not really just forgetting about it. And she said, yeah, we can get into that. Um, it's called cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and I heard the term. I was kind of familiar with it. A lot of people on This Naked Mind went through it. Some people didn't want to go through it because their trauma was just so much that they didn't want to. I didn't ever feel like my trauma was so much that I couldn't go back there. Um, Not that it was not, not that it was nothing, but it was just, I felt like I could talk about it and go back there and address it. So she gave me some techniques. She said, it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort. It's exhausting. It can be, it can be, but we can, so she gave me like one or two techniques, and I can't remember exactly what they were, but um, I used them. I remember journaling a little bit. I remember like reflecting on some things, calling it out in the moment when I was having those ruminations. Like, why am I thinking that? And then, like, eventually, I went to that therapist for maybe 3 or 4 months, and then and it wasn't every week. It was like every couple weeks. I didn't feel like I really needed it a lot, but I felt like it was helping, so I kept going. But this particular was helpful, and I didn't even need to get that deep into it. It really, so that was the beginning of being comfortable, like sharing my sobriety with people. Like that was really what made me feel like, you know what? I don't have to worry about what other people are thinking. Um, I used to hear it on This Naked Mind all the time. What other people's opinion is of me is none of my business. And I feel like it's true. It's like, it doesn't matter. Like, everybody has an opinion. Everybody, a lot of people can be critical or judgmental. Most of us can be. I mean, honestly, probably some more than others, but at the same time, and that's where also like I wasn't really into my faith yet, and it was like uh, right around that time. So like 2.5 years. That's when I found um, my church. So yeah, that would have been it. So it was like I was going on 3 years, and having to be able to like fall back on my faith was another thing to say, like it doesn't matter what anybody else says, or there's no, like, people can't judge me because it's really up to God to judge me. Like, it's not up to human beings. All human beings are flawed. We're all flawed. Everybody that I'm presuming is judging me also has issues of their own, so I don't have to care. I mean, not that I don't care, but like I don't have to worry about it that much. And I mean, does it still bother me sometimes? A little bit. I mean, here and there. Like yesterday, I did a live stream. I ended up deleting it, but it was like, um, I have a filter on there, but I think it's only for like bad words and stuff, and that's kind of why I'm doing this in a horizontal today to try it, because there's so many comments. Usually it's like 90% of the comments are good, they're encouraging, they're this and that. But yesterday, for whatever reason, the trolls were out, and it was like the opposite. It was like for every one like encouraging or good post that people were being vulnerable and sharing their story, it was like nine derogatory. I think there was even a poop emoji on their gift. I was like, what is this? But back to like talking about the trauma and stuff like that. Yeah, we don't want to share. I'll probably share that like too much in-depth stuff because we're opening up ourselves to like cyberbullying. We're opening up ourselves to, whatever happens on the internet, and we don't. I mean, we don't want that, right? So, but in general, I would say that the trauma can lead us to in our childhood can lead us, and it led me to alcohol eventually, and then that drinking that led me to depending on it, addiction. It happened pretty quickly. I would say it happened, um I mean, immediately, but it really went further when I turned 21 and could buy it all the time because it wasn't as easy to get. So that's really when, and then that's when I started isolating more. I mean, I started isolating after the DUI, mainly because people were still like smoking weed. I didn't want to be around that anymore. People were drinking. I didn't really want to be around like trouble. You know what I mean? I wanted to get through what I needed to get through, and get to the other side of that. And it just felt like everybody that I knew was troubled, or at least drinking, partying, and whatever. And I didn't really want to get in trouble anymore. So, but when I was 21, uh, yeah, that's when it really escalated. And then a few years later, just I noticed it starting to be like, you know what, I'm losing things. I dropped out of college, not really by choice, uh, but I wasn't getting the grades, and I wasn't getting the grades because my self-esteem was lacking. My drinking was accelerating. Um, I had lost a girlfriend. I didn't have much going on. I moved back home, and it just things were not going well, and that's when I started, and I had a major panic attack. I think I made videos on that at 24, and that was really when I started to be like, you know what, I gotta do something about my drinking because it's making everything harder to deal with. It's making things difficult, and but I was only 24, 25, 26. So, I mean, I was still able to endure the hangovers. I was still able to function, do my job, which I got a job, a good job, and stuff like that. Eventually, go back to school. Um, Eventually, I met my wife, and we have a family, and all these things happened, and I continued to drink, but it was when I couldn't control my anger anymore, and just kind of like looking at that, like, look, I'm turning into like my dad, who wasn't like a drinker. He wasn't my biological father either, anyway. But like he was my dad in all respects. But he couldn't handle much, and he'd get angry at the flip of a switch. Any little thing that went wrong, he'd flip out. He could have and then he'd say things he'd regret to his loved ones, and then he'd push people away. And that was something that I feared, and I felt like I was becoming that, but I couldn't do anything about it. Um, and ultimately, it was the alcohol. It was not the whole reason, but it was a major player and the reason why I couldn't get to the other side of my problems. Like, no amount of therapy, no amount of meditation, eating healthy, all these things. It was removing the alcohol and keeping it removed, and then doing those things, and then adding more positive things that kept me on the path that I ultimately felt better in. And then, just keep growing, and then eventually you look at like alcohol, like it's not even important. There's so much more to life, and it's not necessary. It's not even, it wasn't fun anymore anyway for me. Like, I didn't even like being drunk anymore. So I think that helped. But a lot of the other issues that went along with that were just, I had enough. So, well, Joe's, thanks for sticking with me on this. I hope you got your car cleaned up, and I hope you continue on this sober path. Um, oh, here, I didn't scroll down. Exactly, he's 7. He knows what it is, and that it makes mommy act weird. He definitely didn't like when I drank. You have one son. I was 15 when my dad was an alcoholic, and my dad was an alcoholic. I snuck his Jack Daniels from the cupboard for the first time, and alone, and I liked the feeling. Me and my dad actually drank together eventually, but we didn't once he got really sick. He was diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver. He passed in 2021. Then I really ramped up my drinking. Well, my condolences to you for your dad and for your loss. That does suck. And yeah, I mean, cirrhosis of the liver. I mean, it's I mean, we're tempting fate the more we drink, you know what I mean? And it just feels like, um to have that removed, that worry removed, is just, it's freeing, and like, I had, um when I made a video about the pancreatitis that I got last year. Like, most people get it because of drinking alcohol, or it's because of gallstones. I hadn't had a drink in 4 years, 4 or 5 years, at the time. And uh, they did an ultrasound. There was no issues with gallstones or anything like that. So I followed up with my doctor. He said it was probably like a viral thing, acute pancreatitis. But looking at that, it was it was kind of like freeing to know that it wasn't because of alcohol. Like, I don't know, we don't know what our drinking is going to end up doing to us, but I feel like we're tempting fate if we continue on drinking. And I just mean by, people can drink, some people can drink 1 or 2 drinks and be done. Like, my wife can have 1 or 2 drinks, be done. My best friend can have 1 or 2 drinks, be done. That was not me. That was never me. Uh, I was like 10 plus most of the time. And I knew that that wasn't sustainable. I knew that that eventually was gonna catch up with me. So I'm blessed, and I'm grateful that I was able to get to the other side of that. And I hope that you're able to, and I pray that you're able to stay the course. It sounds like you're doing really well in your recovery, and I hope you can stick with that. And I'm glad that you are tuning into the videos and the live streams and stuff, and staying on this path because it's a good path. So, um, so yeah, I hope you have a great day, and I'll check in back. I got a video on Sunday, and then I'll be doing that podcast on Saturday. I don't know when she'll post it, but um, I'll be tuning into those. And but thanks for supporting the channel, Joe's, and thanks for commenting and being here. I appreciate you. And we'll talk to you guys soon. Have a great day.